Thank you for joining me. My name is Sean Lindemood, and I'm going to show you how I made this awesome artwork into this coaster on this FabricaShawn Friday. First things first, I want to get another shout out to Raven Symoné Cruz. You can follow her on Twitter at Revenge Lover, or go to her website, revengelover.com. And another shout out to the New Arizona Republic Fallout group on Facebook. Links will be down in the description. Let's get started. So I skipped the software tutorial part of this one. You can check it out in part one. What I did differently in the software was actually inverted what was being cut and added a circle around it to cut that out as a clear cut. So I'm experimenting with material that I haven't machined before. This is Smooth-On's Smooth Cast 65D that I've bonded to a piece of MDF wood. And what I did was I put some tape along the outside edges as a wall, poured the liquid resin into it and let it set up. So it's bonded to the wood, and then I milled the surface flat enough for me to start. This is my zero reference point, and that's my center for the material. So with this stamp, what I did was I recessed it 60 thousandths below the surface so that I have a lip here for the leather to go into and to kind of center it. And because leather is a natural material, it's going to vary in size. I made this a little on the small side. I went in and by hand carved it out so it wouldn't create the impression on the leather when I stamped it. And hopefully got a large enough diameter on that to avoid that this time and just cut it away with the machine. But once that 60 thousandths is cut down, it'll start cutting into the stamp itself. It looks like we have a winner. So when I first did this, I needed a way to cut this out, and I experimented with a couple different ways. A variable hole cutter, which turned out to be pretty violent on the leather, and what I ended up with was looking up how other people did it, and the way the industry does it is that they make a cutting tool that they can press the leather on. So this is the size I ended up with. The first thing I did was cut the center out so that when I cut the leather, you could punch it out from the other side if necessary. And then I put the cutting edge on it and then flame hardened it. So now that I have it off and I'm looking at it, it looks really good, and I'm really happy with how this plastic came out. The font for Fallout Group is a bit small, and if I was to do it again, I would look to make it taller. New Arizona looks really crisp, and Republic looks incredible. So the details on the Deathclaw look really good too. So this tab where I had my clamp is I gotta file that off. But overall, I am super impressed with this plastic being bonded to the wood and being a definite way to prototype things in the future. So I'm sitting here on my floor. I've got a nice stable surface for me to bang on. I've got my hole cutter. I've got my beat up old mallet that's going to fall apart any minute now. I've got an Allen wrench to push the leather out, and my leather. So this was a cheap piece from Tandy Leather that was a real inconsistent size, so it was cheap. I can't remember how cheap, but it was definitely something they were kind of giving away. This is definitely practice leather. So with this, I'm going to start hitting and just work my way around the circle slowly, and then keep going until it's all the way punched through. Bingo. My Allen wrench popped, and I have the cutout. I'm going to start by moistening up the leather so I have it wet to accept the stamp, and I'm not going to punch it. I'm going to just compress it slowly and then leave it. So I'm going to line it up and then get my clamps on it. That's a little bit pressure initially, and then a little bit more. So I'm going to leave this on here for 15 to 20 minutes just to see how it goes. It probably does not need that much to really get a good impression, especially if I'm going to be compressing it like this. So we'll check back on it. Well, it's been 5 minutes, but I really want to look. I can see the moisture wicking out. So with any luck, we've got a full impression. So, not a very good impression at all, actually. I can read it really well, but that clearly wasn't soft enough or wasn't enough pressure. So for the sake of learning, I'm going to go ahead and do this again. I'm going to make this a lot more wet though. The leather's getting nice and supple now, so that must have been one of the mistakes. When I did this one, I'm pretty sure it was pretty wet too. As you can see, the stamp that I did before actually has almost completely disappeared, so I'm not going to be able to line it back up. Double stamping isn't a really good thing anyway, so I'm going to set this back up, and I have a couple extra clamps now for good measure. Reposition this one. So if I had some sort of hydraulic press, I could put it in there and leave it for a little bit. This is really a backup of a backup, so we'll see how this works. I'll come back in another 5 to 10 minutes and see how it's gone. It's been about 10 minutes, so I'm going to go ahead and remove all the clamps and see what I got. So it looks like I have a success. Still a little bit wet. The lettering actually turned out really, really good. It took a little longer than I expected, but we'll let that dry out a bit and then I can finish it up. So I need a burnishing tool to kind of polish off and finish off the edge. This is still my trial piece, so I got a scrap piece of plastic and I'm going to cut a groove and turn that into the polishing tool. So it looks like that'll work, but I got to crank the speed up quite a bit, and we're going to try this out. So I've run it around a few times, and the edge is pretty good. What I'm going to end up doing is coloring it, clear coating it, and then running it over again just to get it the best I can. So I've got a couple examples now. This is our original one, and we have the choice of marker or actual dye. So the one I made a test of, this is actually permanent marker, and then I gloss coated it using the super sheen, and I'm really liking the way that is. I'm going to apply this edging with a Q-tip. This is chocolate brown. On this one I'm going to do permanent marker. Chocolate brown, permanent marker. I'm going to use a chip brush here to make sure I get all the edge. Get a good thick coat on this since this is a coaster. This one actually has a hole in it. It's a tree ornament. Here you can see the progression of the edges, the top one being originally cut, the middle one being just burnished, and then the bottom one being finished and burnished again. I'll be putting out a separate video on how I made this as a machining blank. If you'd like to see that, please subscribe. I'm gonna try to get this out on Tuesday. I'm gonna call it Tidbit Tuesday probably, and we'll see how that goes. If that sounds good to you, give me a comment, tell me what you think, and we'll see you later.